Canada is officially now in a federal election. The Prime Minister Justin Trudeau dropped the writ on Sunday, and climate and energy are expected to be fairly significant issues this election. So I'm going to talk to veteran energy journalist Shawn McCarthy in Ottawa about what we can expect from the parties. We'll do a bit of a high-level discussion this time and get into more detail in the coming weeks as the issues begin to solidify. So welcome to the interview, Shawn.
Thank you, Markham. Again, good to see you.
Likewise, I'm going to start with just a brief overview, sort of the take on what I said back in 2019 when we had the last election. Okay. And starting from the left, remember the Green Party had that we want to put Canada on a war footing to combat climate change.
Right.
That was, I think, the most aggressive of the federal parties' climate and energy platforms. No sign yet that we're going to see that. We haven't got a green platform yet. But we're not seeing that kind of language from Green leader Anna May Paul, so we'll keep an eye on that. The NDP I like to describe as liberal heavy. Basically, whatever the Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are doing, Jagmeet Singh and the NDP are going to do more of it, spend more money, get there faster. It reminds me of Mackenzie King's comment about the CCF, the Liberals in a hurry, in a way. Then we have the Liberals who in 2019 presented a package of policies that experts said would get Canada about 3/4 of the way to net zero by 2050. They've since augmented that as government. And now I think most experts would say they have a credible plan to get all of the way to net zero. So their platform this time around is tweaking, and there's some repeating actually. You know, the will plant 2 billion trees promise has reappeared. There hasn't been a lot of progress on that yet. But I think the big one for me, Shawn, is the CPC, the Conservatives. Andrew Scheer's plan was panned in 2019. He got a lot of criticism for it as being inadequate. And this time around, it's completely different. There's still a big emphasis on hydrocarbons, and Alberta Premier Jason Kenney could have written that section of the platform. Maybe he did, for all I know. But as we've heard those messages before, but there's a lot of surprises in the CPC. A lot of experts are saying, look, this is now a credible plan for lowering emissions. And so the gap between the CPC and the Liberals, I think, is much narrower than it was in 2019. That's my take. I'll turn it over to you, and what do you think of it?
Sure. Well, let's work backwards then from the Conservatives to the Green. Certainly, the Conservative platform is more robust in terms of climate change than it was in 2019, and so, you know, kudos. And as you say, they have had some independent analysts look at it and say it's a credible plan. Couple of points. I'm not sure it actually closes the gap with the Liberals, because you know, if we were talking about the Liberals' 2019 plan, it would close the gaps with the Liberals. But we have moved way beyond 2019. The urgency of climate change, what we saw from the most recent IPCC report about you know, the rapid growth in the problem, I suppose, suggests that things are more urgent than even the Liberals were acknowledging, and probably more urgent than the Liberals have acknowledged. And so yes, the Conservative plan says it's based on Paris commitments, but that's a 30% reduction by 2030 Paris commitment. The Liberals are now at 40 to 45% with a net zero commitment for 2050. The Conservatives have not made a net zero commitment. You know, the part around fossil fuels, you know, it's hard to divorce that from a climate plan. You know, I mean, can you have a credible climate plan on the one hand when you are on the other hand saying we're going to build pipelines and do everything we can to increase exports of oil and gas? I mean, it seems increasingly inconsistent, I would say, for the long term at least. On that. So yes, definite improvements, definite additional credibility, if you will, in the plan itself. But again, let's go back to the not so distant past when the Conservatives had a a policy convention, and they couldn't get a resolution through their own party talking about the extent of the climate change problem, that it was human caused and that needed to be dealt with. So, you know, the leadership has put forward a plan. We have seen plans before from liberals and conservatives. Let's be fair, liberals as well have put forward plans that have not been met. I can go back to 2007 with the conservatives turning the corner. Would have been a decent plan if it would have been put in place and you know, acted upon. It was not. So it's one thing to have a plan. It's another thing to have demonstrated over the last couple of years a commitment to really see that through.
Well, let's talk about some of the things that are new in the conservative plan, just to give viewers a flavor of what is there. Carbon border tariffs, a national clean energy strategy, clean buildings plan, a climate change adaptation strategy, a low carbon fuel standard, more zero emission vehicles, lower industrial emissions, tackling the challenge of plastic waste. I don't think we saw any of those in, if I remember correctly, in the 2019 conservative plan, and there's more than that. Those are
there were versions of some of those things in the 2019 plan. An awful lot of the 2000 plan was dependent on, you know, meeting the U.S., assuming that the U.S. was going to do things and we'll match them. And there's some hedging in this one too. And again, I think it's fair to say there's hedging in the liberal action. You know, the liberal action depends often on, it's not as explicit as it is in the conservative plan, but, you know, if the Americans aren't moving on, you know, tailpipe emissions and improving the efficiency of vehicles, you know, the liberals are not going to go as far either. So fair enough, but I think the issue with the conservative plan to me is there are two issues. One is, as I said, you know, what's the commitment? What have we seen from them in terms of actual credibility that they're once they get elected, they're actually going to put it in place. But secondly, it's very heavy on introducing technology and supporting technology, very light on how you commercialize that technology, how you get it out, how you get people. So lots of talk in the platform about zero emission vehicles and a mandate for zero emission vehicles. Nothing in the platform about encouraging Canadian drivers to buy one with rebates and so on. So and that's true, you know, with their view of carbon pricing as well. You know, everybody, you know, they're talking the talk about new technology, but if you don't have any incentives for people to adopt it, you know, it's going to be very hard to square the circle here and make that new technology have impact on emissions within Canada.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, I've been a critic of conservative climate and energy policies in the past, particularly in Alberta, and so I would agree with much of that. I think it
is. I will agree. I know it sounds like I'm beating up on them. I will acknowledge that it is substantially beyond what Scheer had done, and substantially, I would say, beyond what Jason Kenney or Doug Ford has done provincially.
Yeah, fair enough. And here's where I think this is significant. And at this point in the game, the polls are not suggesting we're going to get a CPC government. It'll be a Liberal minority or majority again. But nevertheless, here's where the Conservatives have made a substantive contribution, and that's in narrative. Because a lot of the public conversation, the discourse in Canada around energy continually gets hijacked by, you know, pipelines and oil sands and other things. We don't talk about the things that we need to do, like electricity systems and renewable energy, nearly as much. And so the Overton window, and for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's basically, if you look at a political continuum, the left to right, it's where on that continuum are the bounds of acceptable conversation. So for instance, the 1930s, you could talk in Canada about communism and Marxism. Can't do that today. It's not in the Overton window, is shifted in the rightward direction. This, in my opinion, Shawn, I'll be interested in your take on it. This shifts the Overton window more towards clean energy, renewable energy, carbon tax, acceptance of carbon pricing. A lot of things that Canadian Conservatives, led by Doug Ford and Jason Kenney in particular, have resisted vociferously. So, from my point of view, that's the most substantive contribution here from the CPC in this platform is around narrative. What do you think?
Well, I think yes, they have moved the goalposts a bit on that, but I also think that on the electricity side, the Conservatives and the federal Conservatives for years have tried to focus the conversation away from oil and gas and onto electricity, where Canada has an advantage in being 80% non-emitting already, and with commitments in conservative provinces, Alberta and Saskatchewan, both federal and provincial, to really move further in terms of coal, at least, if not natural gas. I think the key here, and I might quarrel a little bit with your opening there, is that climate change is going to be a big issue in this election. That's not clear to me, actually. It may be, but the degree to which, if the Conservatives win politically, if they have provided themselves a bulletproof vest on climate change. If they can say, see, we have a credible plan, see, these guys who aren't conservatives say it's a credible plan, let's move on. And everybody else moves on with them. And frankly, in the first couple of days of, we're short into it, but in the first couple of days of this campaign, we haven't seen climate change be a big wedge issue. We haven't seen the National Gallery on the first day of the leaders being out and first day of the campaign hammering away at climate change issues, either for Trudeau or for that matter for O'Toole. So again, if climate change is not a big issue, it's a big win, it seems to me, for the Conservatives. Now, it may help the Liberals in Quebec too. If Quebecers, the Liberals paid a price in 2019 for buying a pipeline. If that's not an issue in Quebec, that may give the Liberals a boost. And you talked about the Green Party and its platform, and it's trying to broaden its appeal, and so it may not focus as much on climate change as Elizabeth May did in 2019, for example. So it may be that we all agree within variations, very important, significant, in my view, variations from really poor response to barely adequate response, but politically that may be where we end up.
I think in this case, I'd have two arguments for why climate change might become a significant issue. And of course, given all the other big issues like the Afghanistan and the evacuation of those,
COVID is a big one still.
Still a big one. COVID-19, we're clearly now in a fourth wave. That could hijack the election. It'll be a big issue, I'm sure. But two reasons why climate change could be. One is because in the 4 or 5 years that I've been following polling data, climate change and energy have been creeping up more and more into they're a significant issue for voters, according to the polling data. So, and then the second thing is the wildfires and other flooding and other issues that we're seeing, like particularly in British Columbia and Alberta. Like British Columbia is essentially on fire. And that's become an issue, a national issue in many ways, as a symbol of our need to respond to climate change. So we'll see if climate adaptation, natural disasters like that are tied to climate change, the extent to which they become campaign issues, and that brings in the larger climate change debate. You know how it is in elections. Whatever you think at the beginning of the election is going to be the big issue is generally not. It's not the ballot box issue by the time election day rolls around.
Right, and I think I'm not saying it won't be an issue. I think one thing is I agree with you. It certainly is more top of mind for people. I think people, even through the pandemic, the last year and a half of the pandemic, concerns about climate change have remained at the top of the list of sort of political concerns that people have. I'm just waiting to see, I guess. I'm not convinced that the differentiation is as strong this time, that the Liberals are going to be able to pin O'Toole with the dinosaur label that Scheer wore in the last one. They will try, no question, but having that imprimatur of some independent climate analysts saying this is a credible plan, the Tories will attempt to deflect that.
Well, let's finish up our conversation with the role of oil and gas and pipelines in the platforms. I think this gets us back to the Conservatives.
Right.
I've looked through the NDP. NDP and Liberals have published their platforms. They make no reference or only a passing reference. Like in the Liberal case, they're now committing that every cent that's made in profit from the Trans Mountain expansion pipeline will go back into climate transition strategies, that sort of thing. But the prevalence of hydrocarbons in the Conservative platform is still troubling. I mean, yes. As you said, it calls for a major expansion of natural gas production and LNG production, primarily on the west coast, in BC. It also calls for more pipelines to ship Alberta oil to market, and that is a very backward-looking strategy. I personally think that and I've argued this in columns, there will never be a new oil pipeline built again in Canada. The market is going to peak way too soon. And so arguing these kinds of backward-looking policy, if anything gives the Liberals a toehold here to criticize the Conservatives about that plan, that's got to be it.
Yes. I agree that the Liberals will try to, and they did in 2019, and they were helped by some of the executives in Calgary who were working with the Conservatives on getting out the vote and this sort of thing, and added to the narrative of a Conservative Party. We were right after C-69, the bill on providing oversight for big resource projects, and that was very divisive, and it was easier for the Liberals, the narrative, to pin them to the big oil, as the phrase goes. And I think they will try that again, and there's room to do that, no doubt. But I hear from the NDP and the Greens that the Liberals continue to subsidize the oil and gas industry. The pipeline issue is still there for the Liberals, even if it's somewhat removed now, and so the Liberals will try to paint the Conservatives as dinosaurs, and the NDP and the Greens will try to paint the Liberals as Neanderthals. So pick your era of prehistory for the party that you don't like. But I think it is an issue for the Conservatives, and if they, not that they're even inclined to, but if they were inclined to be more aggressive about, we are going to have to end the era of hydrocarbons sometime this century, which Stephen Harper said, many years ago. There is a right-wing flank of the Conservative Party that they are, as again in 2019, they have to tend, and they have to, you can look at Alberta politics and see how that plays for Jason Kenney, but it's true as well for O'Toole, and so they need to be very mindful of that, and it is a party still based in Alberta and Saskatchewan with strong representation from rural Ontario.
Well, as is often said in elections, campaigns do matter. And so we'll see
Absolutely.
how the leaders manage to position these particular issues and who can gain advantage on it. Thank you very much for this, Shawn. Appreciate your insight, and hopefully we'll have a chance to chat again during the campaign.
My pleasure, Markham. I'll be here and watching, and very keen to see how this cuts in terms of keeping climate change front and center as an issue that must be dealt with, and must be dealt with not as just another issue, but as a fundamental reordering of our economy.